FRY and FRY, taking a stand against the Nazis to save thousands of intellectuals. In between August 1940 and September 1941, after the fall of France, FRY and FRY took a stand against Article 19 of the Armistice of the 22nd of June 1940 in occupied France by smuggling out some of the Nazis' most wanted individuals. By focusing on saving intellectuals, FRY and FRY changed history by ensuring that them and their work would not perish under Article 19, so that they could keep working long after the war. FRY and FRY had arrived in Germany to write a story on the treatment of the Jews. Appalled by the beatings, riots, and the looks of joy on the Germans' faces, while they partook in the violence, FRY left Germany and tried to raise awareness for the situation. On June 22, 1940, the Armistice Agreement was signed, which split France into two parts. The northern half of France was occupied by the Nazis, while the southern half of France was unoccupied by the Nazis, but controlled by the Vichy government, which was a puppet government on Nazi strings. Article 19, also known as the Surrender on Demand Clause of the agreement, stated that the French government must turn over any and all German POWs, any undesirables, and anybody who stood up to the Nazi regime. During that same June, 3 days after France fell, the Emergency Rescue Committee, also known as the ERC, was formed. This committee was a small organization that was created to help the refugees who were trapped in France because of Article 19. The ERC wanted to send someone to France, but no one volunteered other than FRY and FRY. FRY was aware of the dangers of going to France, but he continued to prepare for the trip so that he could take a stand against the Nazi power. FRY arrived in Marseille with $3,000 taped to his leg and a list of 200 names in his pocket. In addition to that, FRY had a visa for every name on the original list. That list consisted of the brightest minds of the time and had names of artists like Marcel Duchamp, writers like Conrad Haydn, and historians like Golo Mann on it, and continued to grow with every day that FRY stayed in Marseille. Upon FRY's arrival, he went to the American embassy for help and more visas, but he was turned down that help. That was when FRY first learned that America was not going to aid him while he was at France.
Hans Saul was a Jewish poet, writer, and critic who was saved by FRY and FRY.
And I said, my name is Hans Saul. And then he put his arm around me and he said, well, Hans, I'm so happy to have found you finally because I'm supposed to get you out of here. I said, but there are no ways of getting me out of occupied France. And so he said, so he took me to the window and he whispered into my ear like a bad actor. He whispered, we are going to get you out. I said, that's impossible. He said, yes, but there are ways.
FRY set up the American Relief Center as a cover for the work he was doing in France. To the authorities, he was helping the refugees in little ways, like with clothing and food. But FRY was really helping the refugees in huge ways, by giving them money, words of encouragement, and for some, a way out of France. FRY started with the list that he arrived with, but more people soon started coming to him for asylum. FRY and his staff would hear the stories of each individual that came into his office, but only a select few would receive a way out. Among the people who have come into my office, or with whom I am in constant correspondence, are not only some of the greatest living authors, painters, sculptors of Europe, but also former cabinet members and even prime ministers of half a dozen countries. Burying Fry. Fry offered a way out of France for not only the greatest minds in Europe, but their work as well. The routes that Fry used led over the Pyrenees Mountains, and some even took the cultural and political refugees over the Mediterranean by boat to Spain and Africa. These routes were very successful, but they came with a great risk, the risk of being caught by the Nazis and sent to a concentration camp. With these routes, Fry saved people like Marc Chagall and Max Ernst, as well as some other Jewish intellectuals and others whose work went against the Nazi Party. On August 30th, 1941, Fry was given a 2-hour notice by the French police that he was to have all his things gathered before he was evicted. Fry was sent across the border to Spain on September 1st. From there, he returned to America. Miriam Davenport Ebel was an interviewer on Varian Fry's staff and one of Varian's closest friends.
The thing that was marvelous about Varian was that he was able to answer probing questions honestly and never give anything away. He knew how to give a straight, honest answer and yet hold back what shouldn't be said and look very persuasive doing it.
The course of action that Fry took still has an impact on our lives today. The intellectuals that he saved continued their work after the war and brought some of their work with them. If not for Varian taking a stand, these great minds would have been killed, and all their work would have perished in the Nazis' hands. Because Varian Fry saved these people, they made some of the most well-known pieces of art, literature, and music, which would have never been made if not for Fry's stand. They helped bring light to World War II in their own way. Through the paintings they have made, through the songs they have sung, and throughout the books they have written, these people told of Hitler's tyranny and the Jews' peril. Without these people reforming our culture, we would be vastly different from what we are today. The people's work shaped their respective areas of culture, and in turn, shaped generations to come. If the intellectuals that Varian Fry saved had been left to die in France, works such as Le Plissé, directed by Max Offels, The Blue Phantom, drawn by Wools, and the Paris Opera House ceiling, painted by Marc Chagall, which is still atop the Paris Opera House 53 years later, and is visited by hundreds of people. We, as a people, wouldn't have been able to enjoy the wonders of their art and the joys of their music. If not for the work Varian Fry and his men did to help save these people by smuggling them over the Pyrenees and through checkpoints, none of the refugees' works would still be here today. Many of the politicians that Fry saved had an open objection to Hitler and the Nazi Party. Some of them were once Nazi officials themselves, but renounced Nazism and protested against it. These people had enough influence to bring light the circumstances of the Jews' treatment in Europe. When Fry first arrived in France, the word that an American was in the area who could get people out of the country spread fast. People came from other countries that were under Hitler's control to see this man. Most people expected a big, strong man, but they found Fry, a small college scholar with wire-rimmed glasses. People in the area were overcome with hope when they found that someone could get them out of France. The local police knew of Fry's presence and had attempted to have him arrested multiple times, but he evaded capture for over a year before he was finally forced to leave the country.
Varian Fry had a lasting impact on our history through the 2,000 people that he saved. Fry saved the brightest minds of the time and their work through what he did with the Emergency Rescue Committee. The ERC was formed only weeks after the fall of France in 1940 to the German army. Fry was sent to France to help some of the most influential men and women escape the unoccupied zone. After the war, the people that Varian saved continued to work and change opinions around the world. Without these people, our view of history would be very different because we would not have the cultural knowledge that we have today.